One issue that the Woodlands has been on the plate in the Woodlands for a number of years, but has grown much more important, and that's the issue of flood control. We all remember back, when was it? The tax day flood or something of that nature several years ago, when people in Grogan's Point stepped out of their beds in the morning and were waist high in water that had come in overnight and filled their houses up. But I guess it's Hurricane Harvey that dumped so much rain on the Woodlands and caused Spring Creek to roar out of its banks that really brought home or reminded us forcefully again of the need to manage floodwaters in the Woodlands. And surprisingly, since Hurricane Harvey, virtually nothing has been done. Part of the problem is there are a number of different agencies and groups that are concerned with flooding in the Woodlands. There's Harris County Flood Control District number 1 for that portion of the Woodlands. It's in Harris County. There's the San Jacinto River Authority, the Lone Star Conservation Authority. All of these agencies play a role in flood control, because flood control is a regional problem. It's a watershed problem. It can't be confined to one particular geographic area. And as I understand it, the Woodlands the township has sort of played the role of a convener. There's the Woodlands Township Flood Task Force that meets every now and then, trying to get these various agencies to come to the table and make decisions. And it's in my mind, it's really not taken the forceful type of leadership that it should. For example, I believe that for years now, these agencies have been looking for $100,000 to have a study to figure out what needs to be done to control flooding in the Woodlands. Well, the township has squirreled $16.5 million away in a reserve for incorporation, which we don't need and really don't want. So it would seem to me they could peel off some of that incorporation reserve and at least, do a matching, I'll put up 50 if you put up 50, and get this study underway and find out what actually has to be done to control flooding in the Woodlands. But more importantly, the Woodlands has the power really to act like a flood control district or agency within its enabling legislation. I don't want to get down in the weeds too much, but if you read the Texas statutes that created the Woodlands, it also gave the Woodlands all the powers under Chapter 54 and 49 of the Texas Water Code. And when you go read those sections of the Water Code, you see that those are powers to deal with water, with surface water, with flooding issues. So I think the Woodlands has now the power to float bonds, to build facilities, flood control facilities, on its own if it wanted to. Now, unfortunately, others may take a different view of these statutes. They aren't exactly crystal clear. But at the very least, the Woodlands could easily go back to the legislature, and with a simple word or two in its enabling legislation, it would clearly make those powers available to the Woodlands. And that's something that the Woodlands needs to do. The township needs to do, excuse me. The township represents the residents of the Woodlands, and the flooding is in the Woodlands. So we need to be much more forceful and upfront about corralling all these agencies, getting the necessary studies done, and then figuring out what needs to be done to control flooding. Unfortunately, I think that's going to be a pretty high-ticket number, because you're talking about building reservoirs, doing various and sundry facilities to pond water, to hold water upstream, and regulate the flow into Spring Creek as it comes through the Woodlands. But at the very least, we need to do the study to see what we're talking about, so we know the scope of the problem, the scope of the solution, and basically what we can do to take care of flooding in the Woodlands. So how can the township play a more active role in solving flooding in the Woodlands? Well, it's really, the township first has to assert its authority as a flood control agency. That will give it more, power at the table. The township's got to put some money on the table, because all these agencies are short of funds, and nothing speaks louder than a little money to grease the wheels of conversation. And then the Woodlands has got to be the township has got to be much more forceful in coming up with a solution. It has to take the lead in deciding what studies have to be done, and it would have to take the lead after the studies are completed about how we approach the solution. Because it seems to me these various agencies are, they're stuck. They're looking for leadership, and not one of them has stepped forward to give it. And I think that's what the township needs to do. Step out, provide a way, provide some money, get everybody on board, and then proceed to get the studies done and figure out what it's going to take to resolve these flooding issues in the woodlands.